Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Can some men get pregnant and give birth?
Well, I think what you're in danger of doing is to try and incite hatred against a group of people that I care passionately about. As far as I'm concerned, trans rights are human rights. And I proudly stand against any abuse directed towards trans people and the wider LGBTQ plus community. It may seem fun to you and a good way of playing to a certain audience. I'm not going to have it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm simply asking you a question to find out what you think, and you simply haven't answered my question. But if I said to you, Mr. Mayor, I'm a woman, would you recognise that I'm a woman?
If you decided to call yourself a woman, David, and wanted to, transition into a woman, I'd help in any way I could.
And NHS areas are trying to remove words so that we don't have maternity services anymore. They want to change things from saying breastfeeding as becoming chest feeding, for example. I mean, would you support changing the language?
Chair, can I raise
sorry, Chair, I'm being interrupted. And
I believe it is improper, and I
member has a right to
standing orders, section 2.10b, part 2.
No, you have a right to intervene. Please go ahead, Assembly Member.
We're hearing very discriminatory language here, and I think the member should not be further heard.
I would second that suggestion from Assembly Member Russell. This is appalling, and also the Mayor has no responsibility for the National Health Service, and the reports about these matters have been proven to be incorrect in any case. I mean, this is just, completely inappropriate for this Assembly to be listening.
Assembly Member Kurten, I do believe that if not actually, you're verging on very, very offensive comments which are not acceptable, and therefore, can you please move on?
Hello and welcome to the Resistance GB podcast. My name's Emma Dunwell and today I'm joined by David Kurten.
Great to join you on Resistance GB.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. You originally stood as a UKIP candidate and you went on to create the Brexit Alliance and then you went on eventually to create the Heritage Party. Could you talk us through kind of how you went from one to another and what your goals were originally?
I wanted to get involved in politics, I guess, about 10, 12 years ago because I was really concerned about where this country was going. And two things concerned me at the time was like the loss of power to the EU and also what was then called political correctness, which is now more often referred to as wokery, but I understand it as cultural Marxism, where free speech was being undermined unless you adhered to these kind of crazy ideologies like transgender ideology, for example. But if you spoke against them, you get no platforms. So the only party I could see at the time that was actually fighting both of these things on any level was UKIP. So I joined UKIP at the end of 2012. I stood for the first time for Parliament in 2015 against Harriet Harman, actually, in Camberwell and Peckham. I never had much chance of winning that seat, but actually I got quite a good reputation within the party for doing that. And then they selected me to be on the list for the London Assembly next year in 2016. And I got on. So because I was second on the list, I got on to the London Assembly, and I'm forever grateful that I did, because that was a few weeks before the Brexit referendum in 2016, but also I got 5 years to question Sadiq Khan and all of the dreadful things that he was doing in London. And many of those clips are still viewed today, such as when I questioned Sadiq Khan about grooming gangs, and he replied that, "Oh, are you asking me about this because of my ethnicity and my race?" And I said, "No, it's because you're the police and crime commissioner and you should be doing something about it." And that was one of those things. And also the very final session I had with him, I asked him about his tweets in support of transgenderism, and he then turned round and insinuated that I was stirring up hatred just for asking a question. So you could really see what kind of a person he is and what kind of people those, the enemies of freedom are, really, as I would call them.
Working with figures like Sadiq Khan, does he strike you as I suppose, an empathetic man or not?
No, he doesn't strike me as empathetic. He strikes me as a narcissist who will say anything that is necessary to get on. I don't know even know if he actually believes in half of the stuff he says, but he knows how to play to his audience who vote for him. So he supports net zero. He says he does. He supports LGBT. He also supports, the Islam coming in and migrants and refugees and mass migration. But those two things don't go together. I mean, how you can go to, an iftar and, celebrate Ramadan, but then on the other time, on the other hand, say that you support transgenderism, it doesn't work. Even the Muslims in London that I met around said, well, we don't like him because we don't like his support for all this LGBT stuff. So he would say things just to get on, but you don't know if he really believes it or not. He's just there to push the agenda and, keep power for himself. That's the impression I get of him.
How did it feel to be able to kind of publicly call him out on his views when it comes to like the trans ideology?
Well, it was fantastic, and no one else was doing it. There were two of us from UKIP, and I questioned him heavily on these kind of things and asked the questions that no one else would ask. And what was funny was occasionally you'd have people from the Conservative Party, I call them the fake Conservatives, but they'd come up and after I questioned him on grooming gangs, for example, 3 or 4 of them came up to me that morning afterwards, after the meeting had finished, and said, "That was brilliant, David. That was so good questioning. Well done. Love it. Couldn't do it myself, but that was great. Well done."
Couldn't do it themselves.
They'd like it, but they wouldn't do it themselves because they were scared of being called Islamophobic or homophobic or transphobic or racist or whatever. So they would only go up so far. They would question him on financial things. Oh, yeah. You're wasting this much money on this. You're wasting this much money on that. And that would be the extent of their questioning, to be honest. They would never ask him about anything to do with freedom or free speech or LGBT or grooming gangs. They just wouldn't have the courage to do it. There was nothing in what I would call the socially conservative space in politics. And so I set up the Heritage Party to be a socially conservative party, but also a party that supports freedom, which I would say that's conserving one of the principal values of our nation. And at the time I set it up, obviously that was the beginning half of 2020, and we just got into lockdowns, and then people were starting to promote the idea of vaccinations and so on. So it really was, I wouldn't say opportune, but, fortuitous. Everything sort of came together there, that the Heritage Party was something I could form, but we could also stand against lockdowns and the tyranny that we saw in the nation back in 2020, 2021. So, that was fantastic to start the Heritage Party up then. And now we're nearly 5 years on, and we've grown since then. We've stood now in 4 election cycles. This year is our 5th election cycle where we're standing candidates in the local elections. But what I would say about the Heritage Party and what I wanted it to be was a party that laid out our manifesto and our principles completely openly and honestly from the very beginning. So I've had a lot of criticism from a lot of people over a lot of things, but at least exactly where we stand on everything. And, that included being against lockdowns and being against no jab, no job and coerced injections and all those dreadful things that were happening back in 2020 and 2021.
Among most politicians, you seem to be someone who has no problem in saying what you think, saying it how it is. You're a very prevalent name in the freedom movement. You've been to a lot of protests in the lockdown. Could you tell us a bit about what that was like and what pushback you had?
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that's very kind of you to say. And, in the freedom movement, beginning, I guess, to protest against lockdowns, I went to all of the protests for 2 years, starting in the very first one in May 2020, where there were only 50 people there, and the police easily overwhelmed it and arrested a few people. You know, Piers Corbyn was there speaking; he got arrested at that time, right up until March 2022, which I think was really an important one, when 200,000 people came out and the police could not stop it. They could not arrest people. There were just so many people there to protest against lockdowns and injections and no jab, no job. And then, you know, everything sort of lifted after that. So I saw the freedom movement grow over 2 years, and I was just so pleased to be able to speak what's true and speak out for freedom, speak against tyranny. And that's what we needed to do. And, you know, I remember back when I was still on the London Assembly, which I was for the first year of lockdowns, I was the only one speaking against it. And I got a lot of criticism, even when I was in the chamber. And I remember one meeting where Nadhim Zahawi, who was at the time the vaccine minister, came to speak to the London Assembly for half an hour, and I nearly didn't get a question. I had to, you know, say at the end they were going to silence me. Everyone got a question except me, and I said at the end, well, sorry, where's my question? And they said, oh, you didn't ask. I said, well, sorry, I did, and I'm here. So then I asked my question to Nadhim Zahawi, and it was really not what everyone else wanted to hear. And I said to him, look, at the time, there was some incidents of a lot of people dying after getting injections in Norway. And I said, well, what about this? So you're not concerned about adverse health effects? And then the chairman stopped me, cut me off. And then you hear you see a lot of the other people from the other parties waving their hands. And the Green woman actually did this, like, you know, a throat slashing movement.
Oh my goodness.
I suppose she was indicating that she wanted me to not be allowed to speak anymore. So, you know, I got silenced for just saying what was so obvious to me, is that these injections were, you know, basically circumvented every safety protocol that we've had since the time of thalidomide, which was put there for a reason. And they were dangerous, but no one wanted to hear. No one wanted to even allow me to put that point of view across. So it was absolutely crazy censorship of speech, of free speech back in those days. And if everyone had listened, how many millions of lives would have been saved? You know, that's the tragedy of it. By censoring free speech of people who could see what was going on and were challenging the narrative, they sentenced millions of people to death and injury.
Have you had, because obviously Andrew Bridgen has said that people who thought that he was crazy before have now come up to him and said, oh, you know, you were right. Have you had any experiences like that where people have come around?
I haven't had any from people who are known, you know, because I'm not on the London Assembly anymore. So I'm not in touch with any of the people I was on the London Assembly with, because 4 years have passed since then. I have had people who are, you know, just people who are not known, just ordinary people, you know, come up and say, oh, yeah, we understand now, you know, you were right, we were wrong. And, you know, but they've been more, you know, ordinary people who you know, don't even have a presence on social media, but maybe just people who have seen me speak about it and actually have come into the Heritage Party on occasion, realizing that they were lied to, as they say. A lot of people were lied to. A lot of people were deceived. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, give that as give that concession to anyone who pushed the narrative, who was in politics or who was in media. But there were a lot of people who just wanted to get on and do their jobs, who were afraid. And some of them have said to me, yeah, okay, we see that now. We understand that you were right. And I wish more people had listened.
This podcast is able to happen thanks to NutriHealth 365 vitamins. For information on how vitamin D crucially supports your immune system, click the link below. More on NutriHealth later.
Would you say that the Heritage Party could be positioned as the home for people with traditional values? And could you talk us through what exactly are the values of the Heritage Party and your policies?
I think we could do, and that's what I want. And when I set it up in 2020, there was nothing happening in the space that UKIP used to occupy and the Brexit Party did for a bit in 2019 until they crashed. Deliberately they were crashed by Farage before the 2019 general election when he pulled out half his candidates. So they'd gone at that time. So I thought we really need a party that is a truly conservative party, socially conservative party, if you like. So, as well as standing up for our fundamental freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, etc., we are for financial responsibility. So government should not be borrowing loads of money and increasing taxation in order to spend lots of money on things that we don't need. The country should basically not be taking on extra national debt, and we should be spending within our means, and we should be not taxing people. I mean, we have the completely the opposite ideology, I suppose, paradigm of taxation is that when you're taxing people, you're taking their money. You should use it wisely just to spend on public services. Whereas you see uniparty people, and Labour especially, think that all the money you earn is theirs, and they kindly let you keep a small percentage of it, which is absolutely insanely kleptocratic. So we have completely the opposite idea of finances and money. But also in social issues, I suppose we would use Christian principles. Now, I'm a Christian, but we're not a specifically Christian party, but our manifesto has Christian principles in it. So I ask all of our candidates three things, well, now four things, actually, due to sort of how politics has moved on. I say, look, we've got four principles here, which are ethical. One is that there's two sexes. There's not 79 genders. You cannot change your sex, and children should be not be confused with gender. So that's the first one. The second thing is marriage as a man and a woman. We disagree with the redefinition of marriage and also how that opens up adoption for children to be placed in families without a mother and a father. Then we are pro-life, so that means we're anti-abortion, except in cases where the mother's life is in danger. Obviously, that's you operate there to save a life rather than to kill a human being. And now, as I say, four now, because the euthanasia has become a big issue due to this assisted dying bill, as it's informally called. So we're against euthanasia. We're against giving the state the power to kill people. And even it's gone further than that now in the amendments coming through the committee stage. It requires doctors to offer to kill people if they are deemed to be terminally ill, or even if they're deemed to have some illnesses that aren't going to lead to you dying necessarily, such as anorexia, for example. So those four things, I would say, are ethical principles, which are Christian principles, socially conservative principles that we have in our manifesto as party policy, whereas all the other parties would say, oh, you have a free vote on those. Which is why when you had the second reading of the assisted dying bill, the majority of Reform MPs voted for euthanasia, along with the majority of Labour and Lib Dem MPs. But Heritage Party MPs, if we had any, would all vote against it.
So you have 23 candidates running for the local elections on May the 1st, but there has been a lot of cancellations with other local elections. Could you tell us what you think is going on with that?
It's absolutely outrageous. Yeah, and I've commented about this many, many times because nearly 6 million people in England in various counties have had their elections cancelled this year. So Surrey, Sussex, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, Thurrock. I know them because I've been talking about them this for months now. 6 million people in those areas have had their elections cancelled. They were due to have them this year. The government has issued an order saying that they're going to be delayed for 1 year. But then when we come to next year, they might be delayed another year and another year. So this is really a war on democracy that's going on. They are still going ahead in 23 places, counties like like Kent and Devon. And I think the Heritage Party has actually been fighting against this on a local level. And in those areas, have actually been instrumental in getting elections to go ahead because the councillors in those areas wanted to cancel them as well. The county councillors anyway, but they're going ahead. So we have 23 candidates around the country, which is, we would have had twice as many because they've cancelled elections in some of our strongest areas like Surrey and Sussex and Essex. But I'm really proud of all the candidates that we've got, people who've put themselves forward to stand and to try to give people an opportunity to vote for someone else who's not in the uniparty, the Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green uniparty that are pretty much doing exactly the same thing all over the country, trying to impose climate emergencies and then restrict vehicle travel and put up wind turbines and arrays of solar panels all over the place and do all these horrible things, rename our public spaces, knock down historic buildings and all this kind of things that are happening, which are absolutely dreadful. We want to protect our heritage and restore our towns and cities and protect our farmland, obviously, as well, and make sure there's no more restrictions on vehicles. And also another thing is, libraries, which are in the care of local authorities. We need to make sure that they're not being used to propagandize this transgenderism to children with drag queen story times and the like. So those are things the Heritage Party will do in local elections. But it's dreadful that millions of people won't have elections this year that should do.
Well, I did want to ask, do you think that it's any coincidence that it seems to be areas in which you had the strongest support?
Well, I think it's obviously foul play. I think obviously Labour there, and with the full cooperation of Tory councillors, I must say, because I know what's happening on the ground, under the radar. It's Tory councillors are very, very much in part of the move to cancel these elections where they are in the county council. So Labour and the Tories are going to get hammered in this election. They know that. Challenger parties like the Heritage Party are coming up, and we're going to do very well in these elections. And they don't want any challenger parties to gain seats on a large level. So, I wish we could have had more candidates. I mean, it's wonderful that we got 23 people around the country in various areas have stepped forward this year to stand. But, I hope the next year when there are elections, we'll have more people because we need to have candidates everywhere. But, the overall plan is even worse than that, because it's not just about cancelling elections for 1 year in these counties. What the plan is, they call it devolution, but it's not really devolution, it's centralisation. It's disempowerment of local people. They want to dissolve all of the district and borough councils and just have county councils and everything pushed up to county council level, which the county councils are very, very distant from local people. It's very hard to get them to, do something for you, where it's easier to get a district council to do something because they're much more local. But that's even worse, because what they want to do is create regional mayors in every county. So every county will have a Sadiq Khan style figure doing what Sadiq Khan has. Surrey will have a Sadiq Khan, Sussex will have a Sadiq Khan, Devon will have a Sadiq Khan type figure who will have complete control over housing and planning and skills and transport within their area. So it's not just the fact that they want to dissolve the district councils and put the power to the county councils. They want to put the power in regional mayors. And, you've got to ask yourselves, do I want my county to be like London with a Sadiq Khan style figure having all the power in my county? And for most people with a sound mind, the answer will be no. But that's the plan. That's what they call devolution. It's a fake devolution. It's a disempowerment. And it's very similar to what happened in communist style Soviet era countries, where you had a commissar in charge of an area, one person with total power. And so they're impossible to challenge.
Well, I can't imagine anything worse than a Sadiq Khan in every county.
No.
So going back to your candidates, could you tell us a little bit about them? Names, give us examples, and why they should be voted for.
Yeah, well, one of our our candidates, I'm going to go campaigning with him next week in Kent. Sean Turner, he's our Kent coordinator. He's also already a parish councillor near Maidstone. He's standing in Maidstone Rural North. Great guy. He's been challenging the climate emergency in Maidstone Council that's been declared in Kent Council, which then by which they go and put up wind turbines all over the place, and also they're trying to go into schools and teach young children that there's a climate emergency and they all need to be afraid, which I think is a form of child abuse, because there is no climate emergency and you shouldn't be going to young children and trying to make them afraid with clearly globalist propaganda. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. And also, of course, he's fighting against the massive development that's going on. You know, Kent is an area which has been hit by migration more than other areas, because Dover's in Kent, so a lot of people come to the country through Dover and the beaches there, and then they get spread around Kent quite a lot. So then there's obviously pressure to build more houses, but the houses are all going to go to new migrants. So he's fighting against that. That's, he's one person of there. All of our candidates are coming up against similar issues. Another one of our candidates that might be familiar to people is Madeline Hunt, who is our General Secretary, and she's been doing a fantastic job producing letters for people to use to write to MPs to oppose the cancellation of elections and to oppose the assisted dying bill, and now to oppose the planning and infrastructure bill, which is coming up in government, which is again going to take power away from district councils and parish councils and put them in the hands of regional mayors in order to approve any planning decision without the opportunity or ability for local people to appeal against it if they don't like it. So Madeline's standing in Teignmouth in Devon, so trying to get onto Devon County Council then. And if she does, I'm sure she's going to stir them up quite a lot. So I hope she gets in, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens after the elections.
So I take it you're going to need activists on the ground to campaign.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. The more people that can help, the better in the places that we have candidates. Yes.
Brilliant. So could you tell people what are the incentives for them to come down and help you guys campaign?
I think if we do an action day, and I was helping Peter Downs, another one of our candidates in Warwickshire, last Saturday. But if you come and help, it's a nice day. Usually we start off, have a coffee, you meet other like-minded people, which is wonderful. Go out, give out some leaflets, maybe knock on some doors. You don't have to, you can do either. Or in some places we're going to have a stall set up with a big Heritage Party flag and table, and you can go and talk to local people in town centres. It's a nice day. You get to meet other people, Heritage Party people and freedom people, if you like. And that's one of the best things, because even if you're not standing as a candidate, you're actually helping the country. You're taking action to restore our nation just on a very local level for a small amount of time. But it's a very nice thing to do, and you've done something good. And then usually afterwards, go and have lunch or something after the morning, and then people can go or do some more as they choose. So that's usually how an action day goes. I'm going to be in Crediton on Saturday the 19th of April, and I'm going to be in Teignmouth on Saturday the 26th of April. So if you want to join me and our candidates on any of those days, please write to office@heritageparty.org, and we can put you in touch with the people who are organising them locally.
Your body's immune system is under constant attack from flu, respiratory diseases and the common cold. And as we all know, vitamin D3 plays a vital role in maintaining a robust immune system. Now you can boost your immune system with Immune X365, our unique formulation that combines effective levels of vitamins D3, C and K2, as well as zinc and quercetin. This unique combination of nutrients in Immune X365 ensures maximum bioavailability of D3, thereby giving your immune system an optimum boost. Or try our new Immune X365 gummies, which are formulated specifically for children and young adults aged from 9 to 17 years old. Remember, all NutriHealth 365 orders come with free 2-day track delivery. Go to NutriHealth365.com to get yours now.
So you have criticised reform and particularly Nigel Farage maybe not pushing back on certain things that we would probably call globalist agendas. Do you think that it's fair to say that when it comes to things like that, they're a bit soft?
Absolutely. I think over the last 4 years, 5 years, Reform has been on the wrong side of everything that's come up. Initially, they supported lockdowns and they supported travel restrictions. Then they changed their mind. Then, even worse, when the injections came out, you got the video of Richard Tice and David Bull talking about the need for care home workers to be jabbed and suggesting that if they didn't get jabs, then they should lose their jobs. And I thought that was absolutely abhorrent to say, if you decide and choose not to take an experimental injection, you should lose your job. So I was completely against that. And actually, one of the best things I've ever done, I mention it occasionally was because it's not a heritage party, but I did some work with the Workers of England Union representing care home workers to try to help them to keep their jobs in the face of this government regulation. But that was completely supported by Reform. And then the next thing was the Ukraine situation. And my opinion is we shouldn't be involved at all in Ukraine. It's nothing to do with us. But then Reform just jumped on, the globalist government bandwagon and sort of started waving Ukraine flags around and saying, yeah, we should give more money and more weapons to Zelensky. And then later on, when there's the situation in Israel and Gaza, which I don't really like to talk about because I know people have very, very strong opinions in both directions on that. But, what Hamas did on the 7th of October was wrong, but I could see what Israel was doing in slaughtering not hundreds of people, but tens of thousands of people, many of them innocent women and children, was absolutely wrong. Even worse than what Hamas had done. And I said we should have a ceasefire, stop giving money and weapons, sending money and weapons into this quagmire where there's ethnic cleansing going on. And again, Reform have been on completely the wrong side of that as well, suggesting, Israel can do what it likes when I don't think it should be supported to continue the hostilities and the slaughter. So for 4 years, they've been on the wrong side of everything. And I think, the Heritage Party has been on the right side of everything because we have principles that we can refer to and look at to determine what's the right thing when certain situations come up, which are just individual circumstances that might not be specifically mentioned in our manifesto, but we know what's right and what's wrong when situations occur.
I'd be curious to find out what you make of figures like Nick Tenconi, the current UKIP leader. Now, obviously, he is very vocal on the fact that it's Christian values all the way, but he is also very vocal on the fact that he would bring back the death penalty. What are your views on that?
Yeah, look, I don't know Nick much. I've met him once at a function in London. He's a nice chap. I would say that, we pretty much agree on most things, perhaps 99% of things we would agree. But the Heritage Party set up a long time before he came in as the new leader of UKIP. That's a shame that he didn't decide to come and join us, On the death penalty, it's a difficult one that needs a nuanced answer because in principle, I'm not against the death penalty. I don't think there's an absolute right or wrong whether you should have it or you shouldn't have it. And I do understand when people hear of murderers, hideous murders like those carried out by Axel Rudakubana in Southport, people's emotions are heightened and everyone, would think, well, here's someone who's done something absolutely heinous beyond what anyone would normally do, and we should bring back the death penalty because of this case or because of that case. I think you need to step back, though, and I would say, although I understand people wanting to bring back the death penalty in certain cases, the law has to be blind. You can't say, oh, we're going to bring it for some cases and not for others. And I wouldn't want to give this government at this time the death penalty because they wouldn't use it against people who are migrants and children of migrants. They would turn it on people who they call the far right. And they would try to use the death penalty against, well, us, basically. I'm not far right, but that's how we're smeared all the time by Labour, the Uniparty, the mainstream media, and globalists. So while I do understand for people who it's absolutely obvious that they've committed mass murder against children, it's a cut and dried case, I wouldn't want to give that power to activist judges and far left globalist politicians who are in power.
Do you think that it's a similar kind of circumstance for the assisted dying bill? Because obviously there's a lot of people that think, depending on the circumstances, if someone who is terminally ill, suffering every single day, they should have the choice whether they want to continue suffering or not. But a lot of people are worried that the government is bringing it in because a lot of people of pension age will be going towards it, obviously with the recent taking away the winter fuel payments, and that's why people are worried that it's a bad thing. Or do you think it's more cut and dry and it's not circumstantial at all?
Well, I understand people's compassion, and if someone is really suffering, I understand why people would say, look, it's the best thing to allow them to be put out of their misery, if you like, and end the suffering. I don't actually agree with that. I don't think that we should have euthanasia even in that case, because it's only a very small number of cases. I suppose I also look at things from a Christian point of view, in that God gives us life, and it's not up to us to take life, and it's not up to us to take someone else's life. And assisted dying, assisted suicide is actually you helping someone to end their life, and that's not something that anyone should do. But the number of people that would be in that category when this is all played out would be a tiny percentage of the people who would be helped to be killed. Look at Canada. You only have to look there for their medical assistance in dying program. And they now offer it not just to people who are terminally ill in great pain, as they say, but people who are just terminally ill but not in pain, people who are mentally ill, maybe people with schizophrenia and epilepsy, people who are a little bit depressed, got minor mental illnesses. They're even offering it to people who are unemployed or who are poor
Wow.
and who feel that they can't cope with life. And that's where it would go. And you're absolutely right, because a lot of this is financial. A lot of this is pension funds and hedge fund managers and people who run the world of finance, and they think, we don't want to pay out all of this pension money to older people. We're going to lose. They counted on making some profit out of people's pensions. People are retiring and spending 20, 30 years in retirement. So the financial houses that make money out of them think, well, we want to bump some of these people off so we can make some profit. So let's get the government or someone in the parliament to introduce an assisted dying bill so lots of elderly people can be killed. That is part of it. It's horrible and it's evil, but that is a calculation that some people have made, and that is a reason that some people want this to be brought in for.
So we've covered a lot of topics, particularly globalist agendas. We've spoken about Sadiq Khan. We've spoken about the trans ideology. What do you think are the three main issues at the moment that no one's talking about, or not enough people are talking about?
The three big issues, I guess, are the climate alarmism, the wokery, and the replacement migration. Those really are three huge issues. And they're the things that really affect our lives. in profound ways. I mean, obviously, replacement migration. People talk about mass migration, but there certainly is a program of replacement migration, and we're told, "Oh, you mustn't talk about that because that's offensive to a certain group of people." But it's on the UN's website. I've had a document called "Replacement Migration" up on the UN's website since 2000, which suggests that the United Kingdom, among other countries, needs to bring in tens of millions of migrants in order to, as they say, keep the pension Ponzi scheme going. So that's one thing which is obviously a plan and a program. And we need to understand this is not being done by incompetence. It's not being done by accident. This is being done deliberately, purposefully by people who want to replace white England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland with another group of people for different reasons. Some people it's for money, some people it's for power because they get votes out of client groups, and others it's for they just don't like our culture, so that is something that I think maybe goes beyond what is acceptable on the mainstream media to talk about. But the wokery as well, we use this word woke now. People didn't really use it much before 2019. People said political correctness, political correctness has gone mad. Then people started calling things woke. But what I would say, this is cultural Marxism, which is a deliberate strategy to create and fabricate oppressor victim narratives. It's a Marxist ideology to create class consciousness in a group of people to feel as though they're victims, and then they can be co-opted to rise up and take power away from the people that do have power. But of course the power doesn't go to them. Ultimately it goes to the intellectuals who are driving the process. So original Marxism was the workers were oppressed by the capitalists who owned factories and owned properties. They needed to rise up and collectivize all of the property, but they never got the benefits of it. The people in the Communist Party, the Bolsheviks, in Russia and so on, they got the benefit from using other people to overthrow and take wealth from people who had it. And we've got the same situation now. All these narratives: women are oppressed by men, black people are oppressed by white people, gays are oppressed by straight people, trans people are oppressed by women. This is the never-ending stream of narratives. Everyone's been made to feel a victim, but they don't actually get anything for themselves. I mean, you look at women who have been deceived into becoming feminists in order to try to take power away from men. And a lot of women now find themselves in horrible jobs, working 9 to 5 on the career path, and they have to sacrifice a family life for that. People look at this and say, well, look, in the 1950s and 60s, a family could survive on one salary in a nice house with 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, and a garden. Now, if you're in London, you're lucky if you can buy a 1-bedroom box with 2 salaries.
Yeah.
And that's what feminism has done. It hasn't been a great liberation. A lot of people are very wound up because they think they need to do this to fight systemic, the patriarchy, whatever. But the results of it are horrible. And this is cultural Marxism. We need to understand that actually the people that it's trying to co-opt in order to facilitate change are not facilitating a change that is going to help them. It's actually going to help the people who are sucking the money and the life out of our countries.
So obviously you wouldn't be in the Heritage Party or founded it if you didn't think that the party could solve those problems. I was just going to ask, how do you plan to make it such a big force for change without much coverage from kind of mainstream media outlets?
It's tough. I will admit it's tough. We get ignored by the mainstream media, completely ignored. They don't even say anything bad about us because I think they don't want anyone to hear about us. But we have to try and get the message out that we're here in other ways. And social media is a great platform. We do as much as we can on there. Obviously, I'm on X. And I now have nearly over 180,000 followers, which is fantastic. I put out as many videos as I can, and other people, members and spokesmen, are starting to do the same. And then it's campaigning. And the more people that we have to campaign on the doors at a grassroots level, the better. And that's how we're going to get our message out. And this is a key time for us, of course, because we have our candidates and we're going to be campaigning wherever our candidates are, even if it's just putting leaflets through doors so people can hear us. We're on the ballot paper in 23 places, which is fantastic. Hopefully more next year. And you know what? One good thing here, which has been very good for us last week, is that there is a site, it's called Election Maps. Well, it's on X, and they do a tally of everyone who's standing and how many parties are standing and how many candidates they were. And okay, we haven't got a huge number of candidates compared to all the seats in the country, but we're seventh in terms of the number of candidates being stood at this election by party. So we're the seventh largest party in the UK now by the number of candidates we're standing. And that actually is very, very positive because people can see this and look at us. And we've been consistently in the top 10 of parties by that measure over the last 3 years. And we maintain our position there. And I think now, you know, I don't like to mention other challenger parties, but there's one in particular that's having a lot of internal strife at the moment. And I think people are very unhappy with that. And a lot of them, they know of us and are coming to us. And we have had candidates and organisers and members from that other party coming to the Heritage Party and joining us because we're actually really exactly what they want.
Yeah.
You know, so
I was going to ask if, due to everything that's going on with reform at the moment, could that be something that the Heritage Party could capitalise on and maybe gain some? I mean, there are some big names. Do you think that if there was a new party created with figures like Ben Habib, Andrew Bridgen, people like that, Rupert Lowe, would you join forces with them, do you think? Would that be of interest to you?
Well, yeah, that's a question a lot of people have asked me over the last month or so. And you know, I would say to them, well, come and join me. You know, I've said to, you know, you mentioned 3 people there. I've said to one of them already, come and join me. You know, the offer's open. And, you know, I'm in touch with another one of the people there. You know, so absolutely, they're great men, men of principle and character. And, you know, I'd happily work with them. Godfrey Bloom is another one who used to be a UKIP MEP back in the day. Another great man. You know, so we're all on the same page. We got to see how it goes, you know, because obviously Rupert Lowe is tied up at the moment with all the legal issues and wrangling going on there. And so on. So we got to see what happens with that. But, you know, for now, what I'd say is, well, you know, people are talking about a new party possibly in the future, but the Heritage Party is here. We exist and we're standing in these elections and we'll stand in the elections next year as well. So I would say to people, look, something may or may not happen with these other people, but they might come and join me as well. So don't wait. Come and join me. Come and join the Heritage Party now because we're here. We have a full, properly socially conservative manifesto of the type that you don't have with Reform because they don't have a manifesto, and the one that they did have in the general election, they stole half their ideas from us anyway. So you know, so we're here. So if you want to get involved now, come and join us, and you know, don't wait for something that may or may not happen. You know, I'm in touch with some of the people that you mentioned, and you know, I get on with them as well. So we'll see what happens.
Brilliant. I know we briefly touched on it earlier, but could you just give us a rundown of action days that you've got coming up and then where people can find you on social media and how they can show you support?
I'm going to be in Crediton in Devon on the 19th of April and Teignmouth in Devon on the 26th of April. Sean's also having another action day on the 26th of April in Maidstone in Kent. So, if you're in the southeast of England, go to Kent and help Sean there. If you're in the southwest of England, come down, help Wesley in Crediton and Madeline in Teignmouth. If you're in the Midlands, get in touch with us. You can help Kim in Northampton. You can help Peter in North Warwickshire. They're campaigning. So, and they're targeting doing leaflets around their whole division. So please just write to office@heritageparty.org if you like, as a central contact point, and we can put you in touch with the right people and tell you where we're going to meet and how you can get involved in those action days.
Brilliant. And where can people find you on social media and your videos as well on YouTube?
Thanks. Yeah, well, I am on X mainly, at David Kurten. I do videos on YouTube, which is, you can just look me up, David Kurten, on YouTube. I also do interviews with people on my new channel, Right Think. So if you look up Right Think on YouTube or Right Think TV on X, you can find me there. Then there's the Heritage Party. If you want to become a member of the Heritage Party, that'll be fantastic. You can join on our website, which is heritageparty.org, and join us as a member there too.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me / meeting me today.
Great.
Thank you.
It's been really good. Cheers.
For more exclusive behind-the-scenes content, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon. It really helps us cover the cost of any live streams, events, protests, or anything that we do. You'll also be seeing any behind-the-scenes footage and anything that we might be doing with Defiance Records.
Resistance GB's new series, 1,000 Words, has me, portrait artist Jake Fern, talking to some of the key figures in the movement. Half my brain concentrating on having a conversation, and the other half on making a painting. Do I succeed at either? You be the judge.